Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting for the City Council for the City of Calistoga. It is Tuesday, August 7th at exactly 6 p.m. City Clerk Flampson, has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Kraus.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Here.
Mayor Canning.
Here. If you've not already done so, please silence or terminate your cell phones. Thank you very much. And you all please stand and join us for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all and welcome. We will start this evening with oral communication on consent items or non-agendized items. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters on the consent calendar or matters of municipal concern that are not on the agenda, pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, also known as the Brown Act. However, the Council cannot consider any issues or take action on any request during this comment period. Speakers are encouraged to limit their comments to 3 minutes maximum so that all speakers have an opportunity to address the City Council. And as a reminder, this Council does not allow for the granting of one speaker's time to another. And with that said, I don't have any speaker cards for oral communication. Is there anyone interested or willing to address the Council on a consent item or non-agendized item? Not seeing anyone move toward the podium, I will close oral communication and I will entertain a motion to adopt this evening's agenda as presented unless a modification is requested.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kraus, a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Council requests and ideas for discussion. Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
I just got one request or question to the city manager. There is a lot of stress in our residents regarding the fires, and like for example, yesterday there was a fire at the plant for the garbage place. And then, everybody start posting questions on all the social media. So I wonder if the city has any reliable source of information, like it can be the city website or it can be the city Facebook page or something that all the residents can go and check and have the right information, because when somebody sees something, the rumors start and they spread so quickly, and it creates a lot of anxiety and panic and all kind of stuff. So I just just local information for our town, no Napa or no the cities around, just our town.
So just if I can step in on that one, as soon as we were made aware of the situation and had a status, I spoke with the city manager and we initiated a NIXL. There was one that came from the county, and then there's one that specifically came from the city addressing what it was, where it was, and that there wasn't an immediate threat to Calistoga. We still find that to be the most effective form of communication at this point. I do know that one of the newspapers on their Facebook page was able to get something out a little bit sooner. The responsibility we have is we need to know what the status is before we can report it, and we've traditionally been a little quicker than our friends over at the county. The last thing we wanted to do is communicate that everything's fine when it wasn't contained, or vice versa. So we probably could have been about 15 minutes faster, but I will say NIXL, it's bilingual. If you're not on it, if a neighbor's not on it, please, I can't emphasize enough, that is at this point still the most effective form we have, and we work diligently to communicate only when we need to so that people don't get the cry wolf scenario. But the challenge is when something like that happens after hours, I don't know, and maybe this is a process we can look at, Kathy, who has access to our Facebook page in your absence at dispatch or something where a posting can be done like that. So let's take that away. Thank you. Do you have anything else, Iris?
No.
Councilmember Barnes.
Yeah, just in the same vein as Iris and
the mayor pointed out, just be fire safe. Be careful of what you do. You're out there barbecuing. Be careful with the cold. Don't take any undue risks. Be very, very cautious. We're heading into the worst months yet to come, fire areas. We are living through an area that is experiencing the worst fire in the history of California, just 40 or 50 miles to the north of us. So be very careful out there. Take care of each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kraus.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Just trying to think of what order to put them in. So since we've already talked a little bit about the fire at the dump, I'll talk a little bit more about it. This is the second fire they've had up there in the last couple of months. Last year they had one or two up there. The dump is not in our jurisdiction, but we sure as heck get called over there when the fire happens. Fires almost always are preventable. I can tell you that with 38 years in the fire service. The California Department of Forestry and the county fire department should absolutely take whatever steps there are to prevent another fire up there before it can't be easily contained and sweeps either into Calistoga or St. Helena. And I think that it would be appropriate to send a letter to the folks that operate the dump and CAL FIRE and let them know that this was publicly discussed. And I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of people in town. When you see a column of smoke like that, an aircraft overhead, that there is a lot of concern given the current wildfire conditions. So we need to put those folks on notice that we're not happy and we're concerned.
Can I address that real quick?
Sure.
Because as of this afternoon at 4:35, so obviously that situation occurred. It is actually the third incident this year of fire at the landfill. As the representative of the City of Calistoga on the Up Valley Authority, which oversees the operating companies for the garbage disposal service and the landfill, first thing this morning, we as a city expressed our deep concern and distress about the situation. I also shared that with my colleagues that I serve on the board for with the UVA, and the UVA has a representative of every municipality and the county. And again, we oversee that organization. On Monday at 8:30 in the morning in Yountville, we have a special session of the UVA that was called, and we have called in the management and ownership of the Clover Flats landfill to explain why this has happened, what they're doing preventatively to do so. The county environmental officer, who's responsible for oversight, has already visited the property twice. There is a very large report coming out with some immediate actions that are going to result in a significant change in the services they're allowed to provide there. And there will be, if I was a betting man, significant punitive action financially being taken as of Monday, because at this point, the circumstance is not acceptable. They are not meeting the required fire standards that were suggested, not quite imposed on them, but you will see a very heavy-handed response. I spoke with the ownership this morning as well as the general manager, and there is no doubt how the City of Calistoga feels, and the City of St. Helena and the county have also weighed in. So
Well, you can certainly express that this was publicly mentioned at the city council meeting, and if there isn't a prohibition of me being there, I would like to go down because I have some expertise in the area, not in dumps, in fires. So,
and the just as a further reference, if there is a financial penalty or punitive actions in that nature, it will be my recommendation that those are not borne by the ratepayers into that organization.
we got to get that through before PG&E changes the law.
Fair enough.
Okay, that was one thing.
Got it.
Second thing, construction debris. We've had a long period of time. We had between council meetings, we had only one, and there was a 5-week thing and everything. And I had received a complaint about construction debris being dumped on the roadside up in Cordham Canyon, and it was outside of the city's jurisdiction. The county road department went over there and cleaned it up and got it taken care of. My guess is that this construction debris was from someplace rather local. It was described to me as wood, drywall, paper, that kind of stuff. I know that from time to time we have renovations that go on in the city. I talked with Lynn back when I got this complaint, and I know that when we issue a building permit for certain projects that we require all of the construction debris to be brought to the dump. But I don't know is that on smaller projects, this is what occurs. So if the building department could make an extra effort to make sure that when they're aware of issue a permit for demolition or renovation, that some emphasis be made that construction debris not be properly taken care of. Two other items, one of which I don't believe we have asked for a moment of silence for, and that is Jack Vossler, who passed away over a month ago now. And again, because of the schedule that we've kept, am I being absent-minded occasionally? We didn't have a moment of silence for Jack. He was a volunteer firefighter here in town. He was a veteran. He did a lot of work for a lot of people. He was a member of the Rotary Club and just a great, very helpful human being to everybody that met him. And in addition, Chuck Beck passed away. That is Rose Beck's husband. Rose was a member of the city council here for at least 2 terms, I believe, 8 years. So if we could have a moment of silence to recognize both Jack and Chuck, I would appreciate it. And their families would too.
We could do that at the adjournment. How's that? Thank you. Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. I have a couple of items. As many of you know, are well aware, our friends and neighbors in many areas, primarily in Lake County, are experiencing some wildfire situations again. There was the opportunity for us to have been activated, us being the fairgrounds, as an evacuation site this past week. The city was very closely involved in that, and that was going to be coordinated through the state of California and the county of Napa in conjunction with Lake County. We were not activated, but just so you're aware, should an activation happen, we will nixle the community as soon as we have, again, confirmation of that. The situation based on last year's experiences and almost 3 years ago now for the Valley Fire is the state and county will have jurisdiction over the evacuation site. They will only request support from the city and from the community in terms of volunteers and donations if necessary. But at this point, they are prepared to take over that site, manage that site, take care of the folks there without us having kind of the second disaster, which often happens, is too many volunteers at one time, too many donations flooding in at once. So just be aware, if you hear anything that we're going to be activated, just please look at your nixle, because that's when we'll be notified. And there's been a pretty tight line of communication between the state and the county and the city being notified on there. Okay. Tonight is National Night Out, thus my bracelet. It's a nationwide effort to talk about safety in your community. I was just over there. It's at Logvy. If you're home watching, go to Logvy before 7. If we finish this meeting before 7, you should go over there. There's popcorn, snow cones, hot dogs. But more importantly, there are booths set up to help residents and primarily children learn about all sorts of community safety. It is a nationwide program that our public safety officials, police, fire, highway patrol, etc., are all a part of the district's attorney's offices there. It's creating a fun event and activity for the kids to learn about the importance of different safety issues in town. So that is going on again, and we're participating as we have each year. And then on to Councilmember Barnes' comment during fire season. Please don't ever assume that a plume of smoke or a open flame that looks like it might be not supposed to be there has already been reported by someone else. Public safety would much rather receive 10 too many calls than no calls at all on a matter. So please see something, say something, call them in. It's an easy thing to do. And again, they would much rather hear from too many people than not enough at all on that situation. And then the last thing I just want to say, thank you to all the well-wishers who wished me a nice vacation after the Tribune published not only that I was on vacation, but where I was. And fortunately, I came home and my house was still there and nobody got into it, even though they know it was vacant for the better part of a week.
They tastefully left your address out.
All right, thank you very much. City Manager's report. City Manager Feek.
Just a few comments. I won't speak to the fires, as I believe those have been addressed here, but one of the comments that came up when Councilmember Lopez Ortega spoke was the mental health piece and component of fires. So one thing that I personally have noticed is that, smoke, the smell of smoke, the sight of fire causes reactions that take me back to last year. So there are sufficient and probably more than sufficient resources to address the mental health needs of the community too. We have plenty of information available, so if people are seeing things, smelling things that are taking them to prior periods, don't hesitate, contact the city. We have friends at Up Valley Family Center. We have friends at Napa County Department of Public Health. There are many other resources out there to address that part of living life after a fire, which I think are also important. And then the last comment I would just make is we're preparing to start working with a contractor on a community survey. If the City Council remembers, as part of the budget process, we wanted to go ask residents what are their priorities, what are their expectations for city services. And as we work to develop this draft survey, the goal is to provide a tool in English and Spanish where we can go to residents and ask them what are their preferences, what are their priorities, how do they feel about the quality of services they get. As we've talked about recently, I believe Councilmember Kraus has brought this up, we have incredible response times from both police and fire. We're now going to attempt to provide free rec programs to the community. We want to make sure that we're meeting the expectations of the people who live here. And I think the community survey will be a very helpful and useful tool that give the City Council information about what those expectations are. So I'm really excited to try this. I've done it in other communities, and I'm excited to try it here in Calistoga. And that's my update for this evening. Thank you.
And to that point, when the survey comes out, please fill it out. We can't fix something if we don't know it's broken. We can't change something if we don't know that you don't like the way it is. Silence is acceptance, all right? Moving on, we're going to proclamations, presentations, and awards. And I'm always happy to do one of these. This is a presentation of service award to Utility Systems Superintendent Ben Zachariah for 20 years of service. Ben, if you'll approach the podium, I'm going to read to you what this says. Don't laugh at the glasses. Service Award presented to Ben Zachariah, Public Works Department Utility Systems Superintendent from 1998 to 2018 with sincere appreciation for your 20 years of dedicated service to the City of Calistoga, presented by the Mayor and City Council, City of Calistoga. Ben, thank you very much. Come on up here and receive this. We'll give you some thanks, and you can say whatever you want after that. Thank you. Ben, you're not off the hook. You got to come over here.
Does the ice cream rule apply to Public Works?
Stay there.
Welcome to standing, but you're not obliged.
All right, thank you.
Ben is one of our dedicated city employees who's in the background. making sure everything happens the way it's supposed to. And if it weren't for people like Ben there, we would all know very quickly. So Ben, thank you very much. Have a good night. All right, moving on to consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented unless a modification or pull is requested.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. I have a second by Vice Mayor Dunsford. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing. The only item we have before general government. Item number 9, continuation of consideration of an appeal received from Sandy Tucker of the Planning Commission's denial of use permit 2018-5. The recommended action this evening is to adopt the resolution. Prior to starting and taking us through this, which I believe will be Planning and Building Director Lynn Goldberg, are there any disclosures or declarations? I was not here for the last hearing on this matter of the City Council, but I have made myself familiar with the documents and the discussions, so I am capable and able to sit for this discussion. Any other disclosures? All right, with that said, Director Goldberg, please take us through this, or are we going to start with the City Manager? All right, thank you.
Why don't I start, because I believe ultimately this is a continuation from the item on July 17th, and I do want to make known my absence was not, it was very intentionally planned. I was on my bicycle riding 430 miles across the state of Iowa at the time we held our last meeting. So it was not planned to not be here for the appeal. But certainly well aware of what the council said. There was quite a bit of questions and concerns brought up from the city council about, the city manager's perspective in the process. And I think ultimately what the item is before the council tonight is really we're going to do a couple things. First, I'd like to provide a brief overview of my involvement in this use permit appeal, how I came into, knowing what was going on, what my actions were, and essentially lay the groundwork from my perspective why we're here tonight. But then the action items before the council tonight, you really have 3 action items, which are the same items from the meeting on July 17th. Before you tonight is the appeal for the use permit to operate a formula business in Calistoga. The 3 items that you can perform: first, adopt a resolution denying the appeal, which would affirm the Planning Commission's action from months ago. The second would be to adopt a resolution approving the appeal with conditions that have been reviewed by the City of Calistoga and the applicant. We've reviewed these conditions. It's my understanding that the conditions were what was discussed at the council meeting, the direction provided to staff, and there are things that I would say are very mutually agreeable from both the city staff and the applicant. The city attorney has also had the ability to weigh in. So you'll see something with use permit conditions that if you uphold the appeal and grant the use permit with these conditions, that's your second option. The third option is to direct staff and the applicant back to negotiating further conditions if there are any. To provide a quick overview of my involvement, the first thing that I want to say, and just make sure that this is very clear, is to Sandy, to her attorneys who represent her, they've been very kind, courteous applicants. I believe it was brought up at the last meeting where Vice Mayor Dunsford said Sandy's the nicest person in the world. And I say that because I watched the 2-hour video when I got back, and I want to make sure that that's very clear, that there's the reason we're here tonight is about a process that's documented in the city code, and I want to share my perspectives as to how I got involved and why I got involved in the way that I did. So originally, when staff began working with the applicant in approximately early February, it was about occupying a building which previously had been unoccupied for years, for many years, with absolutely zero movement or opportunity to put something in. So I do believe there was some ambitiousness, if that's the right word, from staff to work. We always work with applicants. We want to find a legal path for them to get their project moving forward. That's the way we do business in Calistoga. And at the same time, we were looking at a building which has been unoccupied for many, many years. So in those early discussions, comments were made, municipal code was shared about our conditions related to formula businesses. And there are 6 conditions. We've gone over this multiple times. For me, the 2 that have been ever persistent throughout this process have been, you got to have a unique name, and you can't have signage that's common to other formula businesses. And you've seen the definitions exactly as they're written, but those are kind of the 2 issues. So as discussions further along, staff and the applicant are working towards getting a business license, getting a project started, getting a business in our downtown and previously unoccupied building. It wasn't until early May where I became aware of what I call the fictitious name statement in the newspaper. And when I looked at the name statement, which said Next Home in the Valley, to me, that was a red flag. I've heard of Next Home. I know they're a fairly young mortgage company, but it is a franchise. And when you look at the different franchisees in that organization, you'll see Next Home in the city, Next Home in the Triangle, Next Home at the lake, Next Home in the valley, Next Home with something following it. And so in my mind, I equated that to, a Safeway in the valley, a Safeway of Calistoga, a Loop of Calistoga, other possible formula businesses with a minor tweak to a name, which to me did not indicate that it met that criteria of a unique name. The other item, which I just want to make sure that for the record is very clear from a city manager's perspective, is the applicant also is related to a city employee. And even though there is zero involvement of that city employee in any part of this process, the perception from others could be very different. And so from a manager's perspective, I'm very careful and cautious to try and manage those expectations, because even if there isn't a conflict of interest, which there's clearly not, there's always could be a perception of a conflict of interest. And then we hear comments about that. And the last thing I want to do is, one day come into work and have someone say, hey, why did this business happen, when clearly the code requires a use permit, and how did this person get there? And now they start drawing conclusions, and that makes for a difficult Monday for me. So when I contacted Sandy, those were the things that were going through my mind, which eventually lead us to where we're at here today. At the council meeting on the 17th, the council provided direction that staff and the applicant work on conditions which meet the code criteria and which are mutually agreeable by both parties. And really one of the main issues was the signage. And it was even asked if the applicant could obtain something from Next Home, from the franchise, that said the signage is okay, it can be this way. I'm going to read real briefly a couple of the conditions that we have for you tonight. So as I said before, one of your considerations is to uphold the appeal and deny the use permit. The second opportunity or option that you have, which I'd recommend, it's attachment 2 of your council agenda packet. When you look at the resolution, we have an item listed as Exhibit A, and these are the conditions of approval for the Next Home Realty Use Permit, which is UP 2018-5. Many of the conditions are the same that were presented to the Planning Commission at their earlier meeting, but a few of the changes and requests that we made deal with item number 3, signage requirements, following the council discussion. The first item that we asked for was item signature requirements 3A, exterior signage and signage prominently displayed in any street-facing windows shall not include the Next Home name, logos, or standardized design elements. Exterior signage wording shall be limited to, in quotes, real estate or real estate office or substantially similar generic language. So it was very clear from day one that there's no logos, no names, no changes down the road. It's actually codified in the use permit itself as an exhibit, that it's generic language for any signage that goes on the exterior of the building. Item B, the applicant is permitted to use signage and or decor in the office interior that includes the Next Home name, logos, or other standardized design elements, even if the signage may be visible to the public from the street or sidewalk. This would be someone being able to see through a clear window and see something on a wall, perhaps. The city of Calistoga has had a long-standing practice with some of our other businesses where we don't regulate the signage behind the front door. So what people are doing for marketing materials, for posting materials, for hanging pictures, the city does not go into the building and do that, especially from a formula business ordinance, but we're not paying attention, if you will, to what's on the walls, what brochures are hanging, so on and so forth. And item C would be final sign design shall be subject to the approval of the Planning and Building Department. So we listed out these several items which include clear language of shall. We limit the signage to generic signage only, and it requires the Planning and Building Department's approval. On Monday, yesterday, we received a letter from the law offices of Tina Wallace, who represents Sandy, of an MOU, and we believe we have that tonight to pass out to council, make that part of the public record, that it's a memorandum of understanding between the franchisor, Next Home Incorporated, and the Kala Group or Kala Group? Kala Group Incorporated, which is the franchisee, that lists items 1, 2, 3, and 4 that essentially say, we as the franchisor are aware of these specific requirements. The franchisor shall allow franchisee to use exterior signage or letter identifying the office location as real estate office, realtor, realty office, and essentially that they should comply with city code. So make sure the city council has a copy of that. I believe you already have one. And anyone from member of the public, did we not pass them out? I apologize. You may not have one. If you could just pass this one. It sounds like we did not print them out for the city. This is something that I reviewed, the city attorney's office reviewed. It's not an item that we can require. It's not part of any application process, but it was something that they submitted to us, and we asked if we could include it tonight as part of the public record, which they obliged. So it's more than we would require from someone else. I certainly want to offer any time to the city attorney if she would like to provide any opinion or direction. Certainly, we're happy to answer any questions that the council has. At this point, I think the city council has to make the decision on whether or not to grant the use permit. We feel that the use permit meets the code requirements. The code does allow for a use permit for a formula business. The concerns which have been raised, I believe we've addressed those specifically within the use permit itself. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Lynn is here, and also the city attorney is here. And at this point, we'll leave it to the council for your discussion and comment.
Thank you, Dylan. Michelle Kenyon, city attorney.
Yes, and I would just like to add quickly that, my office and myself included have worked closely with staff and the city manager as well as the applicant in reviewing this application from the beginning. I've also given my advice to the council with regard to all the legal issues associated with this, and the city attorney's office is supportive of staff's recommendation with regard to these negotiated conditions. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Director Goldberg, anything to add? All right, council members, questions? We do have, we will open it to public comment or public hearing, unless you have some comments in advance.
I would like to hear from the public first, and then
I would like to ask a quick question of Michelle. If the council were to grant this appeal, does this potentially open a floodgate for multiple other requests or exceptions to our formula business?
Well, and it's interesting that you asked that because staff and the city attorney's office did discuss that, and we are aware of other similar businesses that have been granted use permits. We feel that the conditions that are that were negotiated between the applicant and staff with regard to this particular business are similar, and in fact, if this was used as a precedent, it would be acceptable to staff, the city attorney's office, and it will be up to the council to determine if it would be acceptable from your perspective. But in our opinion, and I think staff would agree with me, these conditions imposed on similar businesses would be acceptable.
Thank you.
Michelle, just to make it absolutely clear, it does not set precedent because each applicant that may come in the future has to stand on its own merits and cannot rely on a former applicant, say Curves, or if this one were granted Next Home. They cannot rely on what happened to those people, only the merits of their application.
Correct. You're absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. With that said, I'll open public comment. I do have one speaker card, unless the applicant would like to go first. Save it to the end? All right. Please.
For not filling out a speaker card.
No, you're the applicant, and you do not only have 3 minutes, so take your time.
Well, I don't think I'll need very long. My name's Emily Fisher with the law offices of Tina Wallace, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here again. And really, I just want to thank the council for your direction, giving us the opportunity to work with staff and come up with some conditions that I think really address the city's concerns and the applicant's needs, and really want to thank staff for their assistance and help working with us. They've been great and really appreciate it. And that's, unless you have questions for me, that's all I have to say.
We reserve the right to ask questions after the
Okay.
public hearing is closed.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you very much, appreciate it. I do have one speaker card. I have Yvonne Henry. Should you so choose, but you are not required to do so, please share with us your name, which I've done, and your address. And please
Same
limit your
name.
comments to 3 minutes.
Same name, Yvonne Henry. TripAdvisor. On June 12th of this year, TripAdvisor named the 10 most blissful destinations for wellness travel: Park City, Utah; Ojai; Calistoga, California; and 7 more. Congratulations, Calistoga. Interesting to note that all 10 have formula business ordinances. This could be important. Regarding the application for a national chain real estate office, the questions worth gnawing on are: does the proposed business provide needed services to locals and/or visitors? Needed. There are already 2 well-established, successful real estate businesses in Calistoga, which have a long history of supporting community events as part of their public service. A quick look at real estate companies already providing Calistoga with services without actually needing a physical presence: Sotheby's, Better Homes and Garden, Caldwell Banker, Century 21, Pacific Union, and more. Realistically, there will always be a business that desires an exception. The nature of this situation reminds me of a quote by Aesop: "Beware lest you lose the substance by grasping the shadow." The city has safe precedents in following such an ordinance, as was seen in a California appeals court decision regarding formula business ordinances in June of 2003. The court ruled that the ordinance does not violate the U.S. Constitution's Commerce and Equal Protection Clauses and is a valid use of municipal authority under California state law. The members of the Planning Commission fulfilled their mission in reviewing this application and recommending that it not be accepted. Their work and decision should be honored. And it's not just the concerns of the city, it's the concerns of the community that go into making your decision. This is not just about signage. There is a more critical issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council on this matter? All right, I will close the public hearing, so noted, City Clerk, and I will bring it back to the council for discussion. Who would like to go first? All right, so I will.
Okay, you can go then.
Go ahead, Councilmember Barnes.
I have extremely mixed emotions about this one. This may be the most vexing one for me since I've been sitting here for almost 6 years. So the way I look at it, and I was very skeptical at first, and I've been over here, and I've been over here. So I sat down and had a long talk with myself and said to myself, what is this governing body about? What are our city ordinances about? What is this community about? And I came to the conclusion on all 3 of those questions to myself that we are about the rule of law. It is what binds us, it's what keeps us together, it's what makes us a functional society. And our law states that we have to ask 5 questions about a potential formulaic business. Nowhere in that law is the word franchise mentioned. Only the word formula. And the 5 questions are: is it in accord with the general plan and any applicable planned development? The answer is yes. Is it in accord with all applicable provisions of this title, meaning the ordinance itself? The answer is yes. Will not substantially impair or interfere with the development, use, or enjoyment of other property in the vicinity? The answer is no, it will not.
So that's a yes, Will.
It would be, yes, it would be a yes, but it does not interfere. It may interfere with the use and enjoyment of adjacent businesses to real estate offices that Ms. Henry spoke about, but that's not what the ordinance says. It says of the property. Fourth one is consistent with and enhances Calistoga's history of independently owned businesses, thus contributing to the uniqueness of the town, which is necessary to maintain a viable visitor industry and promote its economy. Is this business unique? It is not unique in what it does, but it is unique in how it does it. Is it necessary to maintain a viable visitor industry and promote its economy? No, it is not necessary, but it does promote its economy. And finally, is it resident serving in the case of a formula business? The answer is yes, it is resident serving. It also serves those who are not residents. So the only inconsistency I see is with number 4. Is it consistent with and embrace Calistoga history of independently owned businesses? It does that, yes. Does it contribute to the uniqueness of the town? No, it does not. Is it necessary to maintain a viable visitor industry and promote its economy? It's not necessary to maintain a viable visitor industry, but it does, however, promote its economy. Therefore, there are 2 gray areas only in number 4. And I do not think it is black and white. And so I will come down on the rule of law, the way we the city, wrote the ordinance. I think to do otherwise is indefensible. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members? All right. In terms of the Planning Commission's denial of the application, I was absolutely supportive of what the Planning Commission decided with what was in front of them. What was not in front of them was the compromise that has been reached between the applicant and our staff. That was not on the table for the Planning Commission to decide. I find that the compromise is consistent with other businesses we have in the community. I find that the compromise addresses not only the formula ordinance as we have it, but also the spirit of the ordinance, which is quite important to me. I appreciate the applicant's flexibility in that. I appreciate the extra effort, as mentioned by the city manager, while not required, because the city does not have a relationship with the franchisor. I appreciate the extra effort in obtaining the MOU to give further credibility to what's going to be done there. As many of you know, because I've said this multiple times in my tenure in serving this community, the formula ordinance concept is a hill I will die on. I think it absolutely positively makes Calistoga what it is, part of what it is, and sets us apart from every town USA. And the minute you allow that door to be cracked open, it's a floodgate without stopping. We have been very successful as a community and as a city in mandating, negotiating, and imposing this on some very, very large organizations as well as very small businesses, and it's held. Someday we may go all the way up to some big court somewhere. It sounds like California law is on our side for that. Thank you for that reminder, Yvonne. I have heard a few people say, oh, what's the big deal? It's a very big deal because you let the first one in and then here we go down that path. So I'm very satisfied with the compromise. I appreciate the applicant's willingness to do so. I certainly appreciate and am always supportive of our Planning Commission, but the issue in front of us today is different than what the Planning Commission was able to entertain in their decision. So with that, I would support the conditions of use as applied for, and if all the council members have done, I do have something to address with the applicant afterward.
I am the big concern that I have with approving this is, just like other speakers have said here, opening the floodgates. I am, I guess, going to say I'm going to hang my hat on what the city attorney said, in that this imposes the restrictions that are necessary, that are allowed under our ordinance on a case-by-case basis, so that next week we don't have Century 21 in here, and the next week we don't have Coldwell Banker in here, and everybody else trying to establish a realty office, form a business type of a thing. So I very much appreciate the county, or the city council's attorney opinion.
I have nothing to add. I support everything that's been said so far.
Okay.
To me, it's it's a tough decision that we had to do here, but I'm personally encourage our locals to open a business, to pursue for a dream. As a local business person, I did pursue my dream. I opened my business, and I see she's putting a lot of effort. She's willing to do everything possible to comply with the law and with the requirements. So as a local person, we support some other people from coming, from other areas that they open businesses here, and we support them. So it's challenging, but I don't see why not to support a local person.
Thank you very much. Sorry, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, can I make one more comment? There have been a lot of things talked about on both sides of this question. Sandy grew up here. Sandy went to high school here. She used to work in the building. She's going to save the internal painting, which I think is wonderful. The city has had some concerns about precedent, about the not uniqueness of the business. All of those things are extraneous. In terms of the way I've looked at it, the ordinance, they have nothing to do with the legality or illegality of it. It can only be focused on those 5 things. And secondly, I would like to say to Sterner or Tucker, that thank you for your willingness and your patience with us. This has been a tough one for us. It's been a very tough one for you. And thank you for opening our eyes to the necessity to improve our ordinance. And I would lay that on our legal staff and our city manager. Let's review this. I think the chairman of the Planning Commission, Paul Coates, has said that. I think the vice chairman, Tim Wilkes, has said that. We need to look at this ordinance, tighten it up, define some things. What is formula? What is franchise? What do all these things actually mean? We have to have tight legal definition. Because as our mayor has pointed out, there could be the next one tomorrow and the one after that. And I don't want to sit up here the next however long I'm sitting here defending this ordinance that is, in my estimation, kind of loose, kind of wiggly. It worked to your advantage, and I think others may follow. So I think we need to tighten it up. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. I do have a clarification for Director Goldberg. On the conditions of approval under item number 3B, the last sentence, even if the signage may be visible to the public from the street or sidewalk. Does that not defeat the purpose of not having front signage?
It's interior signage.
This is specific to interior only.
I understand that, so I hang my interior sign just inside my front window. I can see it from the street. I paint a big logo on the back wall, which is large enough to be seen from the street.
We've attempted to address that in item A, which is in any street-facing windows.
Okay, but I find that sentence contradictory to A. That's my opinion and how I interpret that. I'm on 3B, Conditions of Use, Exhibit A, page 11. So we go through all of the agreements up top in A, the front part of B, and then we finish the item with, even if the signage may be visible to the public from the street or sidewalk, meaning it's allowed. Please, that'd be great.
I think the intent there, and I understand your concern, if someone is standing outside the window looking in, there's probably no wall in the building except for maybe the bit that's on the inside front wall, or you wouldn't be able to see what's on the walls. So we intended to make that condition to allow for signage inside the building as is appropriate, but not nothing inside the window that would be essentially an exterior sign or serve that purpose. So I don't know if that helps resolve your concern. It's just not realistic to not have any signs, totally invisible.
I understand that, but trying to
through the
close the
window.
loophole of a
Right.
sign popping up. So Michelle, if you
No,
could.
actually, and I think that is a good point, and I would recommend that we add to the end of 3B, instead of a period after sidewalk, that we put a comma, and then add the language, so long as signage is not located on any street-facing window. So that makes clear that we're not talking about signage located on a street-facing window, which I think is consistent with the intent.
Are you comfortable with that? Okay. Thank you.
Thank
And it's not for this applicant that my concern is, it's for the next one who's going to use this to set precedent. Is the council comfortable with that modification? All right, any other comments from council? Okay, as is my custom, if the applicant is willing to approach the podium. You are familiar, comfortable, and acknowledging the conditions of use that are being
I
applied?
think we'd probably want the applicant to identify
I'm
herself.
sorry. Sandy.
Sandy Tucker?
Okay. You're familiar with and acknowledge the conditions of use in Exhibit A, correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. As amended,
As
sorry.
amended.
As amended. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that said, unless any other council members have anything to add, I will entertain a motion as presented with the amended language to Exhibit A 3B.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. I have a second by Councilmember Kraus. Roll call, please. Okay, fair enough, because it is appeal. Vice Mayor Dunsford, would you like to identify the resolution in your motion, please?
Yes.
This is the resolution to approve with the conditions.
Attachment 2.
Thank you. I'm moving that the City Council approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Calistoga, County of Napa, State of California,
Holding the,
upholding appeal AP 2018-2 and approving use permit UP 2018-5 for Next Home Realty at 1437 Lincoln Avenue with the amended changes.
Councilmember Kraus, will you second that?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dunsford,
Aye.
Councilmember Kraus,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez Ortega,
Aye.
Mayor Canning.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on, there is no general government. We'll move on, and prior to adjournment, as requested, prior to your departing your seats, we are going to take a moment of silence, and after which we will adjourn in honor and recognition and memory of two significant Calistogans who have passed recently, and that's Jack Vossler and Chuck Beck. I will end the moment of silence with the gavel adjourning in their memory. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.